Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. This is Glenn Waston with Aleo, and we're on the sixth podcast, Better Together with Aleo. And today I have a very special guest, Anders Carlson, CEO of Humley. And we are trying to discuss deep digger and understanding how the office design and function has changed post COVID. Welcome, Anders.
Thank you very much, Glenn. So, pleasure to be here.
I am sitting in Marbella in the sun, and you're sitting in the snow, I've heard.
Yeah, so I'm sitting on Hammarö outside of Karlstad in Sweden, and we had a spring coming on last week. It felt like, but now the snow is back, so it is what it is. Yeah.
For people that don't know where Karlstad is, how can you position it in Sweden? That like between big cities or?
Yeah, I would say if you're familiar with the Nordics, kind of halfway between Stockholm and Oslo, roughly. Yeah.
Well, I'm envious of the many lakes that you have. I think in the summer it's amazing. I mean, obviously it's cold in winter, but I've heard a lot about the beautiful water sports and the beautiful lakes or the beautiful islands, sorry, around the Swedish coastline.
Yeah, I think summer is definitely the time to come. So you should come visit. Yeah.
I will take that invite. Thank you, Anders. Hey, Anders, you have been the CEO for only about 3 years, but you have a long experience in technology. Why don't you tell a little bit about your background for the audience?
Yeah, so basically, my background in this industry started roughly 15 years ago when the business I was running at that time were helping a company build a platform for room management and room reservation systems. So this was back in 2007,
Mhm.
and at that point, I was an entrepreneur driving up a software consultancy business. Um, but a few years later, after being involved in this meeting manager project for a couple of years, I actually sold my consultancy business and spent a year doing a little bit of other things, and then I actually got approached by the founders and asked if I were interested in joining on a partner level at that stage, and
Mhm.
so yeah, I thought it sounded really interesting, and it was a little bit of shift for me going from software more into a software and hardware focus. So that was a really exciting challenge for me that I jumped on, of course. So
I can imagine. And so it brought you to Humley, which is very much tied to the office usage, etc. How can you explain a little bit about what Humley does and how you're linked to the office space?
yeah, so basically, I mean, we try to explain ourselves like we're a Swedish workplace experience company. And
Mhm.
that means that we don't do all the heavy lifting necessarily. I mean, we rely a lot of our solutions is on integrating with Microsoft 365, Google, and other platforms. But what we do is to take that data, for example, around meetings and reservations, whether that be rooms, huddle spaces, or desks, or so on, parking spaces. And we take that and we make it even more easily accessible to the end users, saving them time in their everyday work life. And we do that through our platform of software solution, but also we produce our own hardware when it comes to desk booking and other resource booking like rooms and so on. And we do that because we think that there we can really contribute because we do it a little bit better in these areas than the competition. Yeah, we'll probably continue to build hardware as long as we don't find what we need on the market. But
Yeah, exactly.
basically,
Well,
we're a software as a service company. Yeah.
you mentioned desk offices, parking spaces, etc. I can only imagine that COVID completely changed what your offering was, or at least had a big impact on your business. Can you take a little bit about the COVID period and what you saw happening during those years?
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting as you mentioned. I mean, it was actually almost exactly 3 years ago since I started as CEO of Humley when we launched this Humley brand. And incidentally enough, that was February 2020 at ISE down
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Amsterdam back then.
yeah.
So it was actually when the Chinese people kind of said, "Oh no, we will not come," and just a few weeks later, basically all offices around the globe, shut down, and
It
we
was
had just
ignorant
gone.
bliss. Yeah, I remember thinking, oh, it's not going to be that bad. Maybe we'll have to wear a mask for a few weeks. Little did we know.
Yeah, it's so true. And I mean, of course, it made us change our plan quite a lot. I mean, but I think that was what's happening kind of across the world. Basically, everybody panicked, I think, for the first 3 to 6 months, and even some businesses that would actually thrive from it in some ways
Yeah.
were worried. Will we have to let off people and so on? And so it was a very turbulent first 6 months, I must say, for launching a new brand.
Not the stars did not align for your start as a CEO, but I can imagine. I mean, the people. I mean, you probably had a backlog of orders on room displays or front of door displays and agendas. What was the feedback at that time about what people were thinking in this moment of stress? Not talking about post-COVID, but in that moment, what was their thinking? Just stop everything. Nobody's going to come back to the office. Or it's going to come back the way it was in the before. What was the initial response?
Yeah, I think panic pretty much sums it up. But I think from a business perspective, it was just this project. Let's just put everything on hold for now.
Yeah.
And it was everything from resource reasons. Will we have someone that can be at the office to actually do installations and things like that, and other kind of practical and financial questions. But
Yeah.
I think it just took around 4 to 6 months, and then most companies would have shifted into production mode in this new hybrid, or actually not hybrid. It was actually full from home kind of scenario. And I think that at that point, we as a vendor in this space actually experienced two things. One was that the small mid-sized companies were still kind of a little bit hesitant to move on. They wanted to kind of know when we would be out of it. But the bigger companies actually, at least several of the ones we were in contact with, actually took this as an opportunity. Our offices are empty. Let's do these transitions that we talked about. We will not disturb anyone. We can work all day, inside the offices to improve the atmosphere and the technical equipment and things like that. So some took the strategic advantage of actually doing a few.
So in the beginning of COVID, there was not really an idea about going back to the office. The first thing was everybody needs to be at home, working, PCs, laptops, headset, microphones, Teams, Zoom, the individual kind of approach. Did Honey did anything in that space, or did you wait your time to consider, okay, we are still focusing on the office, or was there more integration between the Teams component and maybe then the individual space, or did you keep your focus on the office?
No, I think what we did early on, and the good thing for us was that already back in 2019, before the pandemic, we were kind of seeing the whole movement towards Teams as a strategic movement for us. So we've already kind of started our integrations to the Teams platform rather than having separate applications and so on. We were I think we were one of the first in our segment to actually provide full Teams integration. So, I mean, to some extent, I think that was a benefit for us, having Teams growing so much faster. I mean, we were actually expecting Teams to be, where they are now, a couple of years later. Things just moved so fast that the kind of 3-year plan was condensed into a 9-month.
They had to. They had no choice. But Zoom breathing down their necks, of course, and also being a very successful player. So, consider, I mean, post-COVID, clearly there was on the one hand a push everybody back to the office, but on the other hand, also going back to the office, but not in the same way. I think that's really one of the core realizations that we want to discuss today. What are your key findings, or in your experience? How has the office role changed, the function changed, the design change? I mean, you're working with the office spaces and enabling them for registration, for booking, etc. how has the demand from the customer changed towards Humley as far as how they use their office space in general?
I think that's a really good question. And I think that what we are seeing, and I think also what a lot of the data shows right now, is that, it has been a tremendous shift in how we actually spend the time at work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, traditionally, I would say pre-COVID, in most offices, the workplace was about the place to work. To sit at your computer and work. Of course, people had meetings. There was also, collaboration happening before. But the role of the office was as much sitting of doing, kind of focus work or work in solitude, and combine that with meetings and collaborations. While what we see now, kind of post-COVID, where things have kind of seemed to have settled down at around 2-3 days at the office on average for knowledge workers in the Western world. And here we see that the time spent inside the office during these days are much more, collaboration oriented, which means that more time spent in meeting rooms, workshops, customer meetings, face-to-face activities, including lunches and coffees, and the social engagement around it. So it's much, much less about actually sitting at a desk typing away at your emails.
I think it's my background is in travel and technology, and I compare it a little bit with travel. People said, "Oh, because of COVID, everything's going to be virtual," and I'm in a sales role, and I can say I still travel now, post COVID again, but it's a much more conscious decision, right? What is the reason I travel? What is the quality aspect I want to get out of this face-to-face communication? And maybe once or twice in a sales cycle, I have to see the customer, but I can do 80% of the work from home, virtual, etc. So I'm becoming more productive. But when it matters, I can still add the value in the face-to-face. And I think that resonates with what you're saying. The people go to the office not because they used to, because it's Monday morning, but they say, okay, I need to go because I need to sit with Anders. We are doing the new design of the new tool, and we need to sit together with the marketing team and the finance team and the product developers. And it's about the quality of the office, right? So in that perspective, did you see, because we talked about the function, but the design of the office change? Because we used to have small offices, then we had big, large platforms with desks and then flex desks. What is the trend now? What do you see now in the office as far as design and function?
Yeah. I would like to answer that by first kind of stating that I think for absolutely most customers or office workers or big corporations that we meet in our work, they have more questions than answers right now. It's clear that the kind of first wave that was just about making sure we get the video equipment in there, making sure we can support this hybrid way of working. Basically, the end user requirements have kind of gone through the roof in terms of expectations, especially around video meetings. So that has been a big push inside this industry and in offices in general to kind of have the equipment required. But that's just the first step. I mean, there's still, how are we going to change this from, a situation where we expected everybody to be at the office 5 days a week, between certain hours, and you could always expect your colleagues and so on to be there. And I think that there's a lot of experimenting going on, everything from policies or routines, and saying that okay, we will have anything from 30 to 70% desks compared to how many people we are, and use hot desking and systems to support that, to other companies just leaving things as they are, to kind of see what happens next, and then a third category that's really going all in on collaboration spaces, just leaving a few desks to be at when you're basically in between meetings during this day in the office, I would say.
Yeah, I have a couple of pictures. I think I just want to see your experience. I mean, examples of spaces that it's not longer a desk, right? It's not like I'm sitting at a desk. It's about the almost a homey feeling. It's about being creative. It's about having the right, even the right, if you talk about architectural design, even the right color schemes, the what spurs creativity. I mean, this could be the living room of somebody, right? This is more like you, instead of taking the work home, I feel like people are bringing the home to work now. So it has to
Yeah.
be more about socializing, ideating, the relationship. I mean, that's really the craziness. When people were going to virtual calls, they were saying, oh, we don't have that personal communication anymore, but it has shown how important it has become. And I think the role of the office has no more focusing on the emotional, social aspect of work versus the factual data kind of work, right? You can do that at home, but how do you bring the culture, the collaboration, the little sensitivities and the creativity is really where the office boils down to. Is that something that you see with your customers as far as also the use of your tools? Maybe does it change your design as far as what is needed?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. I think I actually saw, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, one of our partner resellers where they actually set an office, looking like more like a home office, with a couch and a lamp.
Yeah.
So it's kind of felt like a little bit more like an atmosphere. I think uh, the most important aspect of it is I think to kind of have places to hang out with. I think some of this that you show there in the images are pretty clear on that, where people have this natural spaces to socialize when they are at the office. Hanging, if it's hanging out for a coffee, going for lunch, having uh, you know uh, activities around, let's say, a shuffleboard or
Yeah.
a pool table or whatever. uh, I think we'll see a lot more of that, and just finding other ways of hanging out and having meetings in contexts that are not meeting rooms per se. So I
Mhm.
think that's a very strong trend we see.
Yeah. Would there be any kind of advice or tips or lessons learned that if you say, okay, if you are considering today the new office building or revamping the office, what would be kind of your idea or your advice besides the fact of having more space? Is there anything specific that you've seen with almost your customers say, okay, that was a good idea or that was a good idea, as far as what the audience or the listeners can take home?
No, I think number one is actually, I mean, the mantra we're trying to push is think flexibility, because I think that the only thing we know is that things are still changing. We kind of come from a situation, that where we were fully 5 day at work, then fully 5 day at home, and we are, as human beings, there's some built-in inertia where we stay the same. We do what we did yesterday, we're doing it today, we're going to do the same thing tomorrow. So there's still the kind of balancing being found now to attract people to be at the office, to really be to take advantage of the um, of the social engagement and the kind of corporate culture and all of that, and still balance that with the kind of newly gained interest and benefits seen from working from home. So I think try to keep it as flexible as possible, and also make sure to think about the end user and the human perspective. It's not always, I mean, I come from a technology company, but it's not always technology. It's not always, there you need to go find the answers. It's sometimes about clear communications, good policies, also having, let's say, management, saying and doing the same thing, and not kind of saying, yeah, you don't have to be here 5 days a week, but the manager is there 5 days a week. Uh, and those kind of things. I think that is really important. But when there is help that can be taken from technology, just make sure that it does not become about the technology itself,
Yeah.
because we do see in a very concrete way how you can kind of get like app fatigue, or
Yeah, 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 yeah.
you get notifications all the time. I know myself, and sometimes I'm supposed to use my phone to sign into some web page or something for multi-factor authentication, but then there is this text coming in and I'm checking that first, and then I get off on a tangent, end up totally different. And I think we need to see that in a bigger context to be a little bit mindful about people's cognitive load and how much energy they spend fighting or with technology, or how much it can actually be a tool to help end users.
Yeah. While we're shifting on the next question, I will open up for for whoever is on the call for some questions, and they can just type in their question in the chat box. Anders, I mean, you talked about change and about change. Everything is going to be. You need to be flexible. A little bit thinking ahead. What about AI? Is that going to change how we use offices, or what? Thinking about change and the speed of change, that is going to go quite fast, and only faster, I think.
Yeah, I think the super interesting thing we see with AI is to actually make use of a lot of this data. I mean, we talked about data being the the new oil, or the kind of the new value that's driving a lot of business. But to actually make use of this data in a proactive way, not reacting to the actual graphs and analytics that we show up in afterwards, but I think and there's a lot of that in the office space actually. With if you take data from temperature sensors, expected weather, how many people are typically in the office, what the system already knows about the reservations, we can quite well calculate, how occupied the office is going to be several days in advance. We could, do everything from, making sure that we use the AVAC system in the best way to put optimal temperatures, and we could also kind of manage overflow. Let's say if we have too many people coming in on a Wednesday, which is something a lot of our customers see Wednesday and Thursdays, we can handle that overflow by saying that maybe you have booked a meeting room for 8, but there's just 4 people according to that responded that will show up. Maybe shuffle the rooms around a little bit in advance, just to make sure you get the optimal solution. So
and then what you mentioned also is the use of IoT, obviously all those sensors, then layered up with machine learning and AI, layered up with the devices on your side. And then again, I see here, I think it's Bob, waiting for the integration with Aleo and Honey. Luckily, we are both API centric. We're both connected to Teams as well. I'm sure there will be more interaction, not only from IoT side, but also how we use the room, how we collaborate, how we engage, how we figure out how to optimize that speed of innovation, the quality of innovation with people from home, because I think that's a very important element that we haven't talked about, but I think it's certainly an issue that we see, is that it's not going to be or at home or at the office. I think the standard is going to be at any given time, a meeting will have both face-to-face people and remote participants. And so not only do you have to have the environment that enables that communication with video, with space, with touch screens, with whatever, the technology is going to play a big part in that, but also, as you mentioned, the cultural aspect, because everybody has, if you come out of college and you start your career, you have so many meetings in the course of 6 months, a year, 2 years, you get to learn the meeting etiquette, right? And then the video conferencing etiquette. Now, I think we will have to learn the hybrid meeting etiquette, where there's people talking, where people remote will have to have access and means to participate in that conversation, like having people on a chat live participating or voting or adding content, etc., in this hybrid space. So a technology will have to have both components combined and not just a room system or a team system. It has to be seamlessly integrated. And that's certainly something that I look forward to seeing, because I know that that's something that we're looking at a lot. And again, I think the integration of room and home is a critical element for both our companies to work on.
Yeah, and I think actually what we find very exciting with Aleo is this kind of making the meeting experience engaging for the one participating remotely, being able to actually take part, because many times in hybrid meetings today you kind of end up, you know, on the passive end of the meeting, so to say, if you're joining remotely. So I think having the right kind of tools to be able to you know, bring the participation experience to a new level, that's going to be very important. And I think we will look back, you know, and think about how could we, you know,
I already look back and say,
way.
why did I do what I did? Anyway, Anders, we're at the end of the half hour. I thank you so much for your insights, your open, transparent way of communicating. It was a pleasure meeting you today and chatting about this very interesting topic. I'm sure we'll have a lot more to discover and to talk about in the next couple of months. But I want to thank you for being here on behalf of our listeners, and looking forward to meet face to face on a sailboat somewhere on around the islands of Karlstad and beyond.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you
Thank you
so
very
much,
much.
Carlson.